So this is just a little quick spiel about something I feel pretty passionately about. I have felt this way for a long time, something that's kind of close to my heart in a lot of ways, which is basically the subject of addiction and mental health, and basically looking at those of us in society who have suffered in this way, who have in the past or who are currently dealing with issues of some kind of addiction or what society calls a mental health issue, which can be very arbitrary in a certain way. It may not mean much to some people to talk about an anxiety disorder or depression or something like that. And some people say that, you know, it's just a natural part of life that people have anxiety or depression, and it's hard for a lot of people to fully understand, I think, the profundity of what can happen in those that experience chronic anxiety or depression, or have a behavior pattern like drug addiction or codependency or something that really takes up a big chunk of their life, that really is at the forefront of their existence. Like for myself, all of those things at some point have been up front and center on the stage of my life, to the point that I couldn't really function properly by society's standards. But more deeply than that, I felt unhappy with myself, and I felt like I was living in a sort of prison. I was living in a kind of nightmare. So I'm talking about it just in terms of how society already sees it, which is that there's a certain number of people who have these problems, right? It's like a certain subset of our population who's kind of, the word is marginalized. So it's like, here's the page, you know, everyone's story is being written on the page of the world, and then here's the margin where there's a bit of scribbling, you know, doodles of those who are kind of cast to that edge of our structure. And obviously it's one of the problems that we face in this sort of world of momentum and competitiveness, and, you know, whatever the world looks like now, it seems to be focused on a small group of people who are able to succeed, and a larger group of people who have difficulty doing so and who kind of are struggling at the bottom. And whether or not the people on top are struggling or not remains to be seen. I have a feeling that even those in the positions of power who don't seem to be afflicted with the worst of the suffering of humanity, I would argue, are also struggling in their own way. But anyway, in terms of, I think, the importance of what this can teach us, what addictions and mental health are actually pointing to in our society, is something that's really noteworthy and worth considering. For example, if we see someone who's acting out, you know, who's, like, for example, I was a drug addict and I would act out in ways that were pretty abominable. I would steal, I would lie to people close to me, I would try to manipulate people into giving me money, or into looking past my shortcomings. And then of course the only thing that people saw was those behaviors happening. No one saw what it was like, you know, consciously, like what my consciousness was like at that time, the state of myself, you know, who I am for myself, the condition of my own being wasn't really considered by the society that tried to treat me, that tried to deal with, you know, my own acting out, my own rebelliousness. But basically there's sort of a function of people like the way I was, people in that situation who are acting in that way. And basically what it is to make, or to promote, an awareness in society to look at themselves as well, so that everyone else is focused on maybe the person who is the most dysfunctional. Like in a family, that seems to be the dynamic, if there is that going on. It's that everyone in the family can kind of pinpoint the problem with one person, say, okay, well, here we go again. Here's Mike being a drug addict and, you know, being depressed or something. So we're gonna just say, you know, that he's the one that needs to get better. He's the one that's kind of not fitting in with our status quo, or kind of our framework of reality, how reality should be, how it always has been, you know. So we're gonna do what we can to make him better, and then everything will be okay. We'll put it all back to, you know, that nice, normal framework that we used to have. But obviously, as most of us know from any kind of reading on the subject, is that it's a lot more of a global issue, you know, both in a family and then in a larger community and in the greater society as a whole. So what happened in my case was that my family would be looking at me first, and all their conscience is flowing out, saying, okay, well, here's the problem. Maybe they say that I am a problem as a person, or they say your behavior is a problem, or whatever. And then all that focus goes on me, for instance, or whoever the person is who's kind of exhibiting those symptoms. But then later on, once we become more aware, more self-aware, we start to realize, oh, well, wait a minute. The person that's acting out is just an extreme example of something a lot deeper that seems to be going on in all of us. You know, that craving for an answer, for some kind of solution, for some pleasure, or that kind of existential angst. You know, it's like I wake up and I feel depressed for no particular reason. It's just like another day of drudgery, another day of doing things I don't want, or anxious, waking up feeling, wow, I'm afraid. I'm just afraid of the world. The world could do me some harm. The world can kill me, and I have to really protect myself, and you know, and it's all very dangerous. And in certain people like myself, there was definitely a sense of that being kind of the focal point, being pronounced in day-to-day life. But then as people around me that had to deal with that extreme manifestation, as they began to become more self-aware as well through kind of workshops and different people they talked to and insights they started having to themselves, they started realizing things like, wow, I've been doing the same thing. You know, not to that degree. I'm not as anxious, I'm not as depressed, and I'm not that addicted. But yeah, if I really get honest with myself, I really am doing the same thing. I'm kind of defending myself against the world. You know, I'm trying to protect myself against what I think are threats, and I'm feeling depressed sometimes and hopeless, but I don't really look at it. You know, it's easy to numb out or something with TV or whatever, and that's where the addiction component comes in. So this is just kind of a ramble about the subject to promote the self-awareness, to grow, to promote the growth of that awareness in anyone who's interested, anyone who feels that they have that sense in themselves of some kind of suffering going on, some kind of issue that maybe they're kind of aware of but not quite ready to deal with. And what helps us become more aware are those examples that we see. You know, the really extreme cases can be useful in showing us the human condition, because we're so used to what it is to be human in terms of our day-to-day struggles and suffering, that it takes sometimes a real, you know, a big kind of calamity before we actually start to look and say, wow, yeah, that's going on with me. You know, I'm anxious a lot. I have these thoughts that are kind of bizarre and crazy. You know, I act like that sometimes. And so that's really all it is for me, and I appreciate any input, and we'll just keep this awareness growing. Alright, thanks a lot.